One of my favorite things about Dad is that he is always willing to give of his time to help with things. Has helped me out many times in things I've tried to do, and I've seen him do that with others, with his family and with Mom's family, where he's been willing to. People in the ward, where he's been willing to spend an afternoon or spend an evening, obviously taking out trees or digging a hole or whatever it is that needs to be done. He's always willing to give his time for it.
Some things I like about you are that you're very service oriented. You do a lot of things for other people. You're a really good dad. You're really loving. You're such a good bishop and neighbor, and you're such a good example of a selfless, kind heart.
One of my most favorite things about Reed is how much he loves his grandchildren. For me, that is just, I guess, one of the best qualities, because when I hear how he likes to take Chase out with him to do things, like to be out working together, typically I'm used to having like adults get frustrated with little kids, like that they can't get the job done fast enough because they have a little person with them. But I really admire that and love that about Reed, and I'm excited for us to have kids because I know he's going to build a strong relationship with them because he loves having them with them. They're like his little buddy, and I love that so much.
My favorite thing about Dad is just how he always taught us how to work, and even when I hated it, even when I hated going out to work, he always just pushed us to always be better. So that's one of my favorite things about Dad.
One thing I really admire about my dad is how he is so unselfish with his time. He's so willing to help anyone that's in need, and he really doesn't think of himself or what he wanted to do or what he had planned that day. He's always willing to give his time to others and to serve them.
What do you like to do with Papa?
My daddy's favorite. My daddy's favorite.
So one thing I really like about Reed is that he truly exemplifies somebody who's taken their life experiences and learned from them, and who has taken his fatherly responsibilities to the max by learning from his father, taking the things that he liked and he didn't like and making himself better to the point that he bends over backwards and does everything he possibly can to make sure his kids know how much he cares and knows for them.
I like I did in bed with Dr. Aaron.
My favorite memory is when I was 15 and Mom was in Europe and you taught me how to drive.
So probably one of my favorite memories of Reed is the day that I asked him to marry Courtney, if I could, marry Courtney, where he came to my apartment in Provo, and when I opened the door, it kind of reminded me of the scene of Harry Potter with Hagrid when he first met Harry Potter. This big man walking through the door, comes in, sits on my couch. The couch is terrible condition as it was. It just bowed and sagged to the floor. And then as I was talking to him, and after I finally asked him if it was okay if I was to ask Courtney to marry me, he mumbled something, and then he started talking for another 10 minutes. And by the end of the conversation, I didn't even know if he had said yes or no. So I finally had to say yes, or ask him if he had said yes or no. And he stands up, shakes my hand, says, "Welcome to the family."
Another favorite memory is when I was driving back to Logan for the first time and I got lost and I drove to Idaho and I called you and you gave me directions and you promised you didn't tell anyone, but basically I've run now.
My favorite memories of Dad, I was telling Katie about them last night, were when I was little and they got me that basketball hoop for Christmas, and I would spend every waking minute outside shooting hoops. I remember every time Dad would come home from work, he'd always put his stuff down and shoot with me for a couple of minutes, and I remember always thinking that he was just like the best basketball player ever because I felt like he never missed. And then Also, just like playing catch when I was little. I remember when we were like, one time we were throwing fly balls back and forth to each other, and I threw one up way high, and it was up in Schaefer's tree, and it came down and hit him in the eye, and he had a black eye for like a week. And so those are some of my favorite memories of Dad, just when I was little and he would play sports with me.
One of my favorite memories is when we were in Boston together, and it was so fun, and you helped me get all settled, and I seriously couldn't have done it without all of your help. And then before you left, you gave me a really nice blessing, and it really helped me just feel really at peace, and I was just so grateful that you could come with me.
My favorite memory was when Dad surprised me with those bowl tickets to drive down to California right after Christmas, and it didn't even matter who played. It was just so much fun. So we had so much fun together, and just spending those days with him is one of my favorite memories.
One of my favorite memories of my dad was when I was in junior high and I was running track, and he wasn't going to be able to be at my race that day because he had to work. And I was fine with that, but I got really nervous before my race, and so I called him just to talk to him on the phone. And he asked me when my race was, and I said it was in, about 45 minutes, and he said, okay, I'm leaving work right now, I'll be there. And I told him he didn't have to come, but he left work right away and came anyway. And he was waiting right there at the finish line for me when I finished the race. And I just felt so good that my dad would drop everything to be there for me when he knew that I was scared. And I think it shows what a sweet, dedicated dad he is.
I would say my favorite memory of Reed is when I first moved into the Heritage Park ward. And he was one of my first friends in the ward. And there was one Sunday where he came up to me, and it was probably in between Relief Society or Sunday school, and was just asking how I was doing. And I think I'd only been in the ward a couple months, so I didn't really know Will yet, and I don't even know if Will had moved into the ward. But Reed started telling me kind of about his family, how he had a son up at BYU, Idaho. They didn't know what he was doing with his life, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then he started telling me how he'd met his wife, how he'd met Gloria. And he said that after the first kiss, he just knew that she was the one. And after that, kind of just walked away. And I was like, that was an interesting conversation. That was really cool that he'd share that with me, but it wasn't until a couple months later when I started to date Will, I was like, that was really cool that Reed came up to me and started sharing all that with me. And I just remember being taken off guard that he was telling me about his son. I was like, oh, okay. But I loved it, so that was kind of my favorite memory of him. And
Hi Dad, I want to wish you a happy Father's Day, and I love you.
I love you, Dad. Happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. I love you.
Happy Father's Day, Dad. I love you.
Happy Father's Day, Dad, and I love you as well.
Happy Father's Day. We love you, Reed.
I love you, Papa. Happy Father's Day.